So it's time for what am I sowing and growing in May, and this is a preview video, so it's just a rough idea of the sorts of things that I'm going to be doing in May. And it always changes, you know, plans always change. It's inevitable in gardening. Things do better than expected, things do worse than expected. You know, the weather is not our friend at the moment. It's interesting though, standing in this greenhouse, that I am kind of pretending this greenhouse is May. So I am topping and tailing the light levels with these grow lights. So I'm putting them on for 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening to extend the day to 16 hours of daylight. And that makes a big difference, I think. And the other thing that I'm doing is I'm heating this greenhouse to about 10, 11 degrees centigrade, something like that. And again, that's about our sort of nighttime temperatures towards the end of May. And that allows me to do the early peppers, the early potatoes, the early strawberries, and the early cucumbers and all that. So let's actually get back to what I'm going to be sowing in May. And actually it's a bit more relaxing month than April was. April's a bit of a frantic sowing month for me. I am starting sowing the Anita salad onions. So I choose a salad onion variety that does well in summer. Not all of them do, to be honest. In fact, you know, probably 80% of them don't. So it's worth picking a good variety. And last year I did Summer Island, but I couldn't get hold of those this year. So I'm doing Anita. I'm also sowing my first succession of purple sprouting broccoli. I generally do another one, just a sort of reserve in June or later on in May. But I'm doing claret and red fire. You sow them at the same time, but red fire tends to come a month earlier than claret. In fact, we're eating mainly the red fire at the moment, and the claret is just starting to come through. So that's worked out quite nicely. I think the red fire started towards the end of February. We've eaten it all the way through March, and as I say, then the claret starts in April. So that works out nicely. Just do a bit of kale, just do a few cauliflowers, a few red cabbages. Most of my red cabbages I've got either in the ground, growing strongly for a harvest in early summer, or ready to go out now for a harvest in autumn. And then I've got the next batch, which goes in after my garlic's harvested, and that's the stuff that we'll harvest all through winter, and actually up until early spring. But we do dig the plants up, pot them on, and bring them into this greenhouse. So that they've not got the weather on them. Otherwise, if you leave them in the ground, you know, they just rot off really. And then calabrese as well. And then my next succession, third succession, I think, of sweet corn. That'll be my last succession. And my first succession of runner beans and French beans to grow outside. I can afford to leave my beans for a bit longer than most people, because I'll have French beans in here, I'll have French beans in the polytunnel as well on the allotment. And so it just gives me a lot of headroom basically. And I don't need to take any kind of risk with the frost or anything like that, or high winds or whatever. And then I've got my last few potatoes, which I wouldn't recommend really doing in May. It's just that I'm doing them in May because we've got building work going on and I can't actually get them planted out until then. But more importantly, come on to the carrots. So I've got, last month I sowed all my carrots for summer and autumn, and so this month in May I'm sowing the carrots that I'll be harvesting in winter. I like to do Eskimo for that because they're really frost resistant. They're resistant to a lot of kind of pests and diseases and things. A little bit resistant to slugs, but not very. I had a lot of problems with slugs this year. But anyway, why am I doing them in May? Because you'd normally do them in sort of late May or early June. And I'm doing them at the beginning of May because I'm growing them in shade, light shade. So take a little bit longer as a result of that. And I've got loads of different lettuces. You can look at the lettuce down below. But basically I've got two successions of lettuce. One to kind of come ready at the beginning of summer, so July, it's not the beginning of summer, July time, and then one at the end of July to see us through August. and yeah, loads of varieties. And the only thing to note about those lettuces is that I'm doing a few that are resistant to latest root aphid. In this kitchen garden where I do a lot of lettuces in summer, I do tend to get quite a problem with root aphid. So I've chosen 3 varieties that are reportedly, and I've got some practical experience to suggest this might be true, resistant to root aphid. And the best one of these is Navara, and look at that details of this one, Alanix, which I've never grown before, and Emokion. Emokion. Anyway, you can look it up in the notes because this database that I'm looking at right now, you'll find a link to that down in the description below. So that's it. Gosh, that was quick. Yeah, that's everything that I'm planning to do in May at this point in time. As I say, plans always change. They never survive contact with reality. I do recommend, though, that you subscribe to my newsletter. It gives you all the topical, timely information that you need, drip fed on a weekly basis. And I think that makes all the difference when you're doing a lot of successions and a lot of different planting locations and all that sort of thing. It helps to get the information drip fed in a more timely manner with lots of explanations as to why I'm actually doing things in the way that I'm doing things. It's all about having a really rich diet all the way through the year, but it's hard to communicate that in a short video. So as I say, take a look at the newsletter. It's got all the information, what I'm sowing, why I'm sowing it, what I'm pricking out, what I'm potting on, what I'm planting, what I'm harvesting, and then all the supporting documentation in video form and written form in my ebook to support all of that, as well as lots of information on sort of pests and diseases and things like that that are applicable at different times of year. My name's Steve. This is the Seaside Kitchen Garden and Allotment channel, and I'll see you soon.